Good afternoon, everyone. If your life was a book, what would the title be? We probably need to think about the contents before we choose the title. Like all the books, there'll be settings, conflict, plot, theme, and characters, which in this case is going to be us and people we meet. There'll be times where we face difficulties and experience the taste of bitterness. There will also be times where we are overwhelmed by happiness. We'll progress and become mature every time we complete a chapter and move on to the next. And in order for us to move forward, we are required to make difficult decisions. If my life was a book, I would name it Choices. We are the main character, and the story is written by us, meaning we have the full control on how we deal with the situations imposed on us. Of course, there will be some exceptions where our burdens get too heavy for us to bear and we have to rely on people around us. Here's the funny thing. Asking for help is also a decision. We can either bear our loads and risk crumbling under them, or we can share our loads with people who we trust and risk being betrayed. But like every book, our life will eventually come to an end. It may be an ending filled with cherished memory, an ending full of regrets and doubts on what could have been, or an ending full of pain, loneliness, and suffering. But despite the type, the fact is, our life will come to an end in the future. Thinking beyond the future. When we talk about future, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? Jobs? Marriage? Starting a family, success, failure. There are a lot of different ways to interpret the concept of future because your future can be whatever you make of it. But this is only when we think of our near future. Because when we think of our distant future, there's only one place that everyone here today will end up in, and that is death. Now let's replace the word the future with death in the sentence thinking beyond the future. It becomes thinking beyond death. Before we go any further, let's talk about death. What is death? An accepted definition of death is the end of a person. The concept of death will vary from culture to culture, from religion to religion, and from people to people. It is very complicated and controversial. Some may say that death is a negative thing. It's an eternal farewell with the people who we build connections with throughout our lifetime. Sure, death can be that is something sad and depressing. But to me, death is neither positive nor negative. It's just simply the reality. As we are born, we die. That's how it is. Now let me ask everyone here a question. How many of you here wake up in the morning thinking, I might die today? Not many probably. Then let's go into more specific questions. Why do we subconsciously think that we are not going to die today? I did not want to include any religious perspective in this talk. I purely want to focus on the simple fact that we die, not what happens after our death. I believe that thinking beyond death begins by us acknowledging it, admitting the fact that we will die someday, and there is no order in dying. Sounds depressing, right? People may ask, why do you have to think about such a dark and negative thing when we can just turn a blind eye to it? Yes, we all know that we will die, but not many of us think that that moment can be today. It may be strange to be listening to this perspective from an 18-year-old student. And yes, I know that I'm still very young compared to those who are here today. And I know that some of you here may be thinking that this is ridiculous, or maybe even ludicrous. But allow me to share a story with you that has made me who who I am today. When I was young, my life was pretty average. I went to school, met my friends to spend some time with, did some stupid things, perfectly normal. I had a friend who today we'll call Oliver, even though this isn't his real name. Oliver and I were best friends. Whatever we did together. Wherever we went together. We were inseparable. As a kid, both of us loved to ride our bicycles, roaming around the streets, racing each other, teasing people, and just being kids. We were happy and were rarely apart. When it was time for us to go home, which we hated, we would always expect to see each other again tomorrow. We even sneaked our phones past our bedtime and planned on what to do tomorrow. But one day, I arrived to school, as normal, excited to do what Oliver and I have planned the night before. I waited for him, but even after 10 minutes into class, Oliver and my teacher were nowhere to be seen. Sitting down wondering where he could have gone to, I was suddenly called to attention by my teacher. I immediately thought about the amount of trouble I was in. Did they find out the scribbles in the toilet stalls? I started to rack my brain over a valid excuse. When I reached the teacher's office, I realized that something was different. Because if I was there to be scolded by my teacher, it should have already started, and I should be looking down and counting the number of squares on the floor, because that is what I usually did whenever I was in trouble. But instead, she sat me down and told me that Oliver was gone. At first, I thought she meant that he moved away. I was a bit disappointed about the fact that he left without telling me where he was going to, but I thought, it's okay. I have his number, I can call him and meet with him sometime soon. So I asked my teacher which school did he move to, still smiling. But she was silent, with a face that showed pain, pity, and fear. That is when I realized that something had gone wrong. Without telling me anything else, my teacher took me to a window where we could see the street. I spotted 3 black limousines. On the bonnet of the second limousine, there was a picture of Oliver. The limousines circled around the school 3 times before leaving. This is a tradition that is performed in Korea whenever a student dies. And that was the last time I saw Oliver. I cried and begged my teacher to tell me the truth. It took 3 days, but eventually she told me what happened. It turns out that he had tried to open up a window while half asleep and had fallen from his room on the 18th floor. When I heard the story for the first time, I was dumbfounded, too shocked to express any emotions. I was filled with futility, sadness, regrets, and a million others that I can't even begin to describe. He was here today, but he's gone. He was here yesterday, but he's gone today, forever. With the benefit of hindsight, my biggest regrets were not cherishing every moment that we spent together. I was just like everyone else. I thought we had more time together. I always believed that we had a tomorrow. This is the event that changed my view towards the value of life. When I look at people nowadays, we are burying ourselves with work, chasing our goals and dreams, only focusing on the future and missing out what is equally important, the present. When I ask my friends, why do you work so hard? A common response is to become happier in the future. But my question is, why do we think that happiness only exists in the future. Here is where the significance of acknowledging death reveals its color. It is a trigger that makes us to evaluate ourselves and what we have been missing out in this moment. It helps us to focus on the present happiness instead of the future happiness that is yet to be promised. The future is uncertain. The idea that tomorrow is going to be better than today is ignorant. The idea that tomorrow is going to be that at all itself is ludicrous. If so, is sacrificing our present for the obscured future really worth it? If it is, more power to you. If not, take a break and think about it and ask yourself the question, am I happy? And if your answer to this question is also a no, then what are we doing wrong? Figuring out what we're doing wrong comes from evaluating ourselves. And there is no better way to evaluate our life than when in the face of death. The idea that our future being able to be taken away from us at any time is going to add a whole new value on the word life. Here's what I think. Life is a journey towards finding happiness. And the only way to find our own way to our own valuable happiness is by focusing on now. Putting aside the obscured future and focusing on the present where we can actually make changes. We all need a checkpoint in order for this to happen. The concept of death can be used as a break for us to stop and ask ourselves why we are doing what we do. And this idea, whether to face death or not, is an individual's decision. It is up to us to decide to stop and think whether our future is worth sacrificing our present. It is up to us to stop and ask ourselves the question, am I happy? We all have limited amount of time. And let's not miss out on the precious value of present by falling for familiarity. Life is C between B and D. Life is choice between birth and death. Whether to accept death or not, the decision is ours to make. Thank you.